Well, hello everyone. I am Matt Williamson. Hope everyone's enjoying their wonderful Wednesday. The weather is beautiful here in the Berg. We get the schedule release tomorrow night. Tune into, I think I'm on DVE with Dale and Pursuta, I assume, at 8 o'clock live. When the schedule goes live, we're doing an hour show. So check that out as well. I'll have some response for you for Friday of stuff about the Steelers schedule. But my plan for today and tomorrow, leading up to schedule release, is recapping my article for the week. And as usual, you guys are too kind with your comments. It went up late last night, late Tuesday night. So maybe you guys haven't gotten to it yet, but check it out. And what I did is I really pulled back and went into every team in the division, what they're at each position, and kind of compared the Steelers. But let's talk through it a little bit more as well. I'm going to do defense today because of the Arthur Millette news, in that he got released. First off, that saves the Steelers. From what I understand, I have to dig into a little more, about $2 million in cap space. We'll talk corners here in a minute, but I'm going to start with the big guys. Defensive tackle. And we have this conversation too much. When I break down the defensive front, it's now you're either a defensive tackle or you're an edge. I don't care if you're 3-4 or 4-3. The league doesn't care anymore. So if you're a big guy, you're a D tackle. I mean, if you're 285 and bigger, if you're Aaron Smith or bigger, you're a D tackle. Other guys are edges, whether that's a 275-pound Miles Murphy or TJ Watt. So anyway, defensive tackles. Steelers, as you probably know, have Cam Hayward, Larry Ogunjobi, Keanu Benton, DeMarvin Leal, Armon Watts, Fehoko, and Adams at the nose. So that's 7 dudes already at a position they usually keep 6. I think Adams could be in trouble, by the way. The Ravens, who I want to talk about the Ravens just for a second. When I did this exercise, you guys might know I'm tuned in with the rest of the league, at least as much as I am with the Steelers, maybe slightly less. But the other 31 teams I'm very dialed in with for all my walks of life and all I've done, in the media and whatnot. And yeah, I had some concerns from a Ravens perspective of their defensive line. But when I put pen to paper, it's a lot worse than I thought. I mean, the Ravens' big guys right now are Michael Pierce, Travis Jones, who I liked coming out of UConn a year ago and thought he could be in the mix for the Steelers, but was so-so. Broderick Washington, who's kind of just a guy, and Justin Matabuke, who's probably their best player on the interior and better than you think. That's not so great. It's not what you're used to playing against from the Ravens. The Bengals have DJ Reader and BJ Hill. It's a really good combination. But Zach Carter is like their only depth right now, and he's not like the others. So depth for the Bengals is very concerning, but their starters are excellent. The Browns' defensive tackle, I'm not exaggerating in saying last year, I think their defensive tackle spot, room, was as bad as any position group in the entire league. I mean, as bad as the Ravens receivers, So to their credit, they went and gave pretty good money to Dalvin Tomlinson, who's a very good player, much more nosy than he is upfield penetrator. And then they drafted a pure nose in Sika Ika, the giant from Baylor. So they just added a lot of beef to the interior of their defensive line, which I get because we'll get to their edge guys. That's where their pass rush will come from. And their linebackers are very small run and hit guys. So I was a little shocked they didn't add to their linebacker group this offseason, but they're protecting them much better. So that adds up. So in Tomlinson and Ika, they also have Jordan Elliott, Tristan Hill, Perry and Winfrey, who was kind of a disaster as a rookie, and Maurice Hurst. So Steelers to me are clearly number one. I mean, not only do they have depth, but they got Cam. I would say the Bengals are 2, and Reader to me is probably the second best defensive tackle in the division. But Ogunjobi would maybe be the Ravens' best defensive tackle. I think Tomlinson's more valuable than Ogunjobi, but they're kind of on that level together. Not to mention you throw Benton into the mix, a second year of Leal. Armon Watts does the Wormley stuff. So Steelers win this one pretty easily, especially when you look at the Bengals' depth. I mean, Bengals need to add a guy there. So at the edge, Steelers have Watt, Highsmith, Herbig. You got a little bit worried about that third spot, and there's no question. The Ravens, as mentioned, their front line worries me. Tyus Bowser is a good player. It's all right. Adefi Owe is an athlete playing football that is not being productive, but might blow up. David Njabo, remember him? They used an early pick on him, didn't play a whole year, and they need Njabo and Owe to hit, and they have immense talent, but nothing to show that they're on the cusp of doing that. And then they used a pretty early pick on Tavius Robinson. It was fine. The Bengals have a good group. They really do. They have Trey Hendrickson and Sam Hubbard, use a first-round pick on Miles Murphy, and a guy from last year that you guys might not know is Joseph Asai out of Texas that they loved. And he got hurt and missed basically the whole year. So that's a really good foursome there. Now, they don't have a Watt or a Garrett. Browns have Myles Garrett. And Myles Garrett was a one-man show last year. But this year, they went out and got Okonkwo from Houston, who was a guy I really was excited about for free agency. And he's basically going to be the starter for them. And drafted Isaiah McGuire as another pick. One of my favorite picks they made as well. So that pairing opposite Garrett, I think, makes a lot of difference for them. I think that goes a long way. Not that people aren't going to double Garrett or Watt for that matter, but at least you now have a Robin to the Batman. They also have Alex Wright. Fine. Now, I'm not going to fight you who's better, Watt or Garrett. We'll just call it a wash. Doesn't really matter. But I'll take Highsmith still over Okonkwo or McGuire. But the fact that they have three that I trust more than two has some weight, and we're not necessarily ranking these 1 through 4, but just sort of comparing. The Ravens are definitely last. That I am very confident about, but there's upside there. I mean, they need one of these picks from the last 2 years to really, hit their athletic, prowess. But the Bengals might be one. I mean, again, they have 3 high quality dudes, good starters, and in typical Bengal fashion, all their DNs are 6'5", 275, Carlos Dunlap types, 4'3" edge setters, tough guys, long arms. So they have a style. So the top 3 teams you can argue. Do you want the star power of Garrett and Watt? Of course you do. And some good compliments, Highsmith and Okonkwo, or do you want, the consistency of the Bengals? I'd probably put the Bengals third just because stars make the world go round and you have the defensive player of the year. That carries a lot of weight. So not a bad group, though, and pretty much improved over the offseason across the league. So quick break here. We'll talk linebackers, which isn't close to as pretty. It's kind of a mess. And secondary, safety, and corners. All right, we're back chatting linebackers, and I think, as I mentioned yesterday, I could see the Steelers signing somebody here. Cole Holcomb, Landon Roberts, Mark Robinson. Ravens have Roquan, which far and away the best linebacker in this division, so they're the best linebacking core in this division. Patrick Queen, who they didn't pick up a 5th-year option, and Trenton Simpson, who now waits in the wings for his turn when Queen gets traded or after the contract's expired, whatever. But he has a lot of work to do. Great athlete. Malik Harrison's also in the mix for them. If Roquan's the number 1 linebacker, and he is in the division, I think Logan Wilson and Jermaine Pratt, the starters for the Bengals, are 2 and 3. So kind of like their edge and really their whole defense is this way. Solid, real good, not superstars, but their starters are quite good. They also have Akeem Davis-Gaither, who they drafted a couple years ago. The Browns would definitely be last for me, but I still have hopes that Owosu Koromora has a strong career. Anthony Walker, Jacob Phillips, Sion Taki are their other guys. And I do think it will help the Browns that they're protecting them better, as we talked about earlier. A lot of speed here, lack of size. They have a certain type. They're very analytically driven. They're not going to invest heavily in linebackers, which the Steelers might not be either, by the way. But I think you go Ravens, Bengals, Steelers with some question marks, and Browns. Safety is also interesting. The Steelers have Minka, they have KZ, they have Neal. The Ravens have Marcus Williams, a really good deep middle free safety traditional guy, and those are hard to find. Last year's first-round pick, Kyle Hamilton, who has some freaky traits, mid-first-round safety with size. He pretty much only played big slot, though. So interesting. He could be a breakout guy. Geno Stone's a quality player as well. Bengals are going to go 2 new safeties. They lost both their starters, so it's going to be Dax Hill and Jordan Battle. That's questionable. They're young. Nick Scott's also in the mix. The Browns have some names. Juan Thornhill, Grant Delpit. These guys have been drafted pretty high. Rodney McLeod. I think you have to put the Bengals last. I would put the Browns easily third. And I think there's more questions than answer with the Browns safeties. I give the Steelers a slight nod. Like, hey, I'd love to have Kyle Hamilton, but he wasn't tremendous as a rookie. And Williams isn't in Minka's class, but he's a tier or 2 below as free safeties go. But Minka's just a stud. So I'm going to take the Steelers slightly over the Ravens. I think Neal will have a role. KZ's a good football player. So let's talk corners here. And now Millette is out of the equation. And what that says to me is maybe there's another signing on the horizon. I don't know that Chandon Sullivan is the end-all be-all slot guy. I do think that they are quickly getting away from the slower, tough guy, undersized corner that isn't great in coverage out of the slot. The Millettes, the Hiltons, easy to root for. They'll throw their face in the fire. They blitz. But I think they want safety types that are athletes playing the slot, which is how the league is going. Maybe it's even Trice or Peterson more than you think. Who's to say? Sullivan's obviously, I guess, penciled in as a starter. Could Norwood do some of that? Yeah. I don't know if he makes a team. And I didn't even list him with the safeties. And certainly Minka and KZ have those capabilities as well. So that still seems to work itself out. But before, when I wrote the article, there was Peterson, Porter, Wallace, Witherspoon, Sullivan, Millette, Pierre, Trice. Like, that is 8 corners on a team that usually keeps 5, maybe 6, so crowded. But for this discussion, also interesting because there's 2 draft picks in there. There's an all-time great that's not what he used to be, but still coming off a really good year in Peterson. And obviously there's depth, so Steelers corner room is interesting. Could it go south? Could it be a disaster? Absolutely. But there's probably a little more upside here than with the other spots. The Ravens have Marlon Humphrey, who I think it's still between him and Denzel Ward as the best corner in the division. But neither's a superstar. They're both really good players. They signed Rock Ya-Sin, quality number 2. And then some recent draft picks, Brandon Stevens, Caillou Blue Kelly, who I liked this year. He's a rookie. And Jalen Armour Davis, who I loved a year ago. So they need one of those or 2 of those final 3 to not only be the slot, and Humphrey's a really good slot as well. He's, inside, outside versatile, like a Cam Sutton, but better. But they, side note on Sutton, no offense to Cam Sutton, but I think they want big, long press man corners. And I think that's a big reason Sutton was not back. He does a lot of good things, but that's not who he is. He doesn't look like Trice and Porter or Peterson for that matter. He seems to tell you things. So the Ravens have 2 quality starters, 3 talented young guys that if 1 or 2 of them steps up, they should be okay. Bengals have a good group, and as is the case with their whole defense, safety aside, they might not be household names, but they're good football players. Chidobe Awuzie, Cam Taylor-Britt played well as a rookie. You guys know Mike Hilton. DJ Turner in the second round, speed guy that can play inside and out, and Sidney Jones. So that's 5 quality corners. They can withstand an injury or 2, and depth here is more important than some positions for me because you play 3, sometimes you even play 4. Guys get hurt. They help on special teams. So I like the Bengals group quite a bit. It's just not star-laden. Mentioned Ward, good player, always undersized, but good player. Greg Newsome, former first-round pick, has been miscast to the slot more than he should. So they drafted his buddy from Northwestern, Cameron Mitchell. Maybe he can grab the slot and bump Newsome outside. They also have Martin Emerson, who's an athletic guy that has some upside. So if I were to rank these groups of corners, I don't know. I really hesitate to put the Steelers first, but I like the options they have. I think you put the Bengals first. They're a little more proven, less turnover. I think the Browns are a little bit square pegs, round hole type of situation. It's pretty close, to be honest, all four of those to me. And we'll see how the Steelers situation, shakes out. But hypothetical, and I'm not trying to dangle a carrot, what if Joey Porter turns into a star? Well, Steelers we want. It's pretty much that simple. And even if he's just a good player, it would be, a big addition for them, obviously. So I thought that was fun. We will do offense tomorrow. There's pretty good quarterbacks in the division, by the way, in case you haven't noticed. Really good division, though, but this is a good exercise. Go check out the article. Talk to you tomorrow.